New Cardi Kaizoku video. Need to watch.
Hi, Anata.
Cardi Kaizoku.
This video is sponsored by Card Market, Europe's largest online marketplace for trading card games. This video is sponsored by Sleeve Chief. Their latest release, the Brothers Strategy Collection, comes out September 5th. It comes with a deck box featuring Doflamingo and Rosinante. It also features a Rosinante and Doflamingo sleeve, border sleeve, 2-player playmat. So if you're excited for this Don Quixote release, don't keep your wallet waiting and pick this up when it releases on September 5th. And use my code CARDKaizoku for 5% off your order. Alright, it's pre-release season time already for OP08. Here is the product page for OP08 on the official One Piece card game website. You can see details for the pre-release tournament that's going to be happening between September 6th and September 12th, and then OP08 itself releases on the 12th. And yeah, this tournament is just a way to test out the cards early, right? The new cards. The stores have two options. They could run it as a constructed format tournament or a sealed tournament. I can't think of why stores would want to do it constructed unless they didn't get product. But yeah, sealed is what everyone is excited for. And yeah, you can check out the full rules for sealed here, but I'll try to summarize it really briefly. So you can bring any leader, you can play any leader you want. Your deck is not type locked, so the cards in your deck do not have to pertain to your leader's color. You'll get 6 sealed booster packs, hopefully randomized. And then yeah, you'll build a 40 card deck with those cards, not 50, just 40. You have to bring your own Dawn cards as well. There's no color restriction, no quantity restriction, so you can run more than 4 of a card if you happen to get a lot of one card. And then yeah, you'll just play a tournament, and then the winner will get a stamped Marco, pre-release winner, blue Marco, and just for participating, you'll get the same Marco without the stamp. And then you'll also get a pre-release pack, which will contain 2 cards from the set that have like a pre-release stamp. You normally should be able to use these in your sealed deck, but I guess ask the store if you're not sure, because I guess each store could have different rules in regards to this. Same with the Marco. All the stores I've been to let me use it, but just for peace of mind, you could ask just in case. And yeah, this time around, the promo that they give you is pretty playable, right? At worst, it's a vanilla stat line. And then whenever he dies, you know, it goes back to your hand so you can play him out again. And yeah, this video will just be going over what cards to look out for in the set that would be strong in the sealed deck if you happen to pull it in your packs. A lot of what goes into a sealed tournament is like less what cards to put in your deck and more what cards to exclude, because you do have to fill a limited 40 card deck slot with only 6 packs. And then it says here, players who purchase 1 booster box during the pre-release will receive 1 additional pre-release pack. To be honest, I think this rule is really loosely followed. I'm pretty sure every store that I've been to a pre-release at did not adhere to this, so I don't know, I just feel like kind of slighted. But it could just be that the stores don't know that this is such like an odd stipulation. But I don't know, maybe this time around I'll ask the store, hey, the website says this, you're gonna give me my extra pre-release pack? Because yeah, some stores will sell booster boxes there. Some will say that they don't have stock and they could be lying to you, or some could actually like not have stock. I don't know, it's all a big mess with the Bandai distribution in the West at least. But yeah, that aside, let's look at the leaders for 08. See if they're worth running. So we have Red Green Chopper here, 4 life leader, Red Green. Activate main once per turn, put up to 1 rested Dawn each on up to 3 of your animal or Drum Kingdom type characters. So right off the bat, it is a type locked leader. So that kind of is a red flag already. And then looking at the animals in the set, I don't think there are enough that you can pull from a sealed 6 packs to build out a 40 card animal deck, right? Because you want to get the most value out of your leader ability. And then the fact that you start at 4 life is already a detriment already. So Chopper's probably not going to be the play, I don't think. If you wanted to run a weenie style deck that, you know, gives essentially like a +1 to each of your characters out, regardless of if they're animal or Drum Kingdom or not. You know, there's always this guy, Zoro. He does what Chopper does, but I think better, to be honest, and he has 5 life. Up next, we have Red Blue Marco. So also another dual color leader, Red Blue, 4 starting life. Dawn ×1, activate main once per turn, draw 1 card, then place 1 card from your hand on the top or bottom of your deck. Then give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 2k power during this turn. So interesting leader ability, right? In the sealed environment, stats matter more because there's less like outright removal events or removal effects on plays that just kill characters or bottom deck them. So having access to minus 2k just for 1 Dawn is a very strong effect in this kind of environment. I would venture to say it's worth it to even start at 4 life for that payoff, having that as a tool in your repertoire every turn. Because you don't even have to attack to activate it, you just need to attach it down on your leader and it's an activate main effect. So that makes it really, really flexible to use it, right? You don't have to like give away one of your leader hits to set up for a kill. And the fact that it also cycles a card out of your hand is great for the consistency factor in a sealed environment, right? There's not a bunch of draw effects, so if you could just have all the cards you need at the time that you need it, that kind of circumvents the lack of card draw, right? If at one point you need to be more defensive, you can chuck a non-counter card in your hand to pick up a 2k counter perhaps. Or if you're bricked in hand and you want to find something to play, you could potentially find it from that one cycle. Every card matters, it builds. If you do this enough times, you'll end up with a hand that, you know, will handle your opponent's board at any stage of the game. So I might actually consider Red Blue Marco as viable. Up next we have Carrot, so mono green, 5000 power, 5 starting life. Activate main once per turn. If you have a character with the Minx type in play, rest up to one of your opponent's cost 5 or less characters. So it does force you to have to play Minx characters. A good majority of them do kind of suck. There's a couple standout ones that you do want to run in your deck, but you just have to hope you get them in your packs, I guess, and then you have to hope you get it in your hand at one point to play it out. Otherwise, your leader ability doesn't do anything. So yeah, same with Chopper, since it's like so type locked. Even though that there are a lot of Minx in the set, you're gonna have to run like suboptimal ones to get use out of this leader ability. So because of that, even though it's strong, right, resting a 5 cost means that you could starve out your opponent, right? You attack the character, they have to counter or let it die. They don't get cards from life. But yeah, just too restrictive. I don't think Carrot is the play either, unless you do happen to pull a bunch of the good Minx, in which case I would maybe consider it at that point. Up next we have King, Purple Black King. So 4 life, 5000 power, activate main once per turn, Dawn -2. You can choose one of these 2 effects. So if your hand is 5 or less cards, draw a card, and then the other effect is you can give up to one of your opponent's characters -2 cost during this turn. So the -2 cost from your leader ability can activate some of the cards in the set, right? There's quite a few cards that do have strong effects that require that extra boost in cost reduction to hit the targets that you want to hit. But it being a Dawn -2 effect and then there not being any ramp in the set, at least not like the reliable ones with Mr. 2 and stuff like that, or Zoro and Jean Bar, you're having to rely on whatever you get in your sealed packs. Makes it really hard to use this leader ability because you really can't afford to use it until you're at 10 Dawn. Because any turn that you do Dawn -2, you're stuck at that Dawn, right? If you're at 8 Dawn -2 to 6, next turn you ramp to 8. You want to be at 10, so you hit 10 next turn anyway, so it's no detriment at all to use this leader ability. But in the late game, you know, it's still 1 card draw every turn, which I guess in a sealed environment, it is slow enough that I feel like King isn't as bad. In constructed, he's like complete horseshit, but in sealed, it's basically a leader ability you can use after your like 4th or 5th turn. But with the caveat that you have to have been able to deal with your opponent's board up until this point, or at least stay even. So it's not like a card that will bring you back from the game, right? It's not a comeback mechanic kind of leader ability. It's more of a war of attrition type of leader ability, right? If you're keeping even with your opponent, that 1 extra card every turn in the late game hopefully will give you the edge over your opponent. But I think some of the other sealed leaders like Kid and Bonnie and Katakuri, they're more high impact. Their value is more apparent and you can use them like early on. So I want to put King on like borderline, probably not going to be viable, but he's not the worst. And then we have Pudding, Charlotte Pudding, Purple Yellow Leader, 5000 power, 4 starting life. When attacking, you may turn the top 2 life cards of your life face up. And then if you do this, you can ramp 1 Rested Dawn from your Dawn deck. I think Pudding also may not be viable because the main draw to playing Pudding is being able to ramp to play 10 cost Big Mom, which is an OP03 card. You don't have access to it in the sealed environment, but you do get to run the big drops in every color, which is like the 9 cost Big Mom, I guess Jack, 9 cost Kaido, Silver's Rayleigh, and Kaido and Linlin. But you'll probably only likely be able to ramp once because the leader ability has a caveat where you have to be able to flip your top 2 life face up to ramp. So if at any point you have a face up life card, you can't ramp with Pudding. Usually in the constructed environment, to get around this, there's cards like Viola that can flip all your life face down, or Katakuri, who can flip 1 life face down and then he ramps 1 himself. And then there's like a Edward Newgate card that does something similar too. It rearranges your life so that you can put the face down ones on top to ramp a second time. Because you can't guarantee that second ramp, I don't think this Pudding is worth it. And again, you need the big drops in your sealed packs to be able to utilize this leader ability. If you happen to get unlucky and you get more of like a mid-range kind of card pool, that kind of makes it not as great to play Pudding because you want to be able to chain your big drops turn after turn. If you're not able to do that, you kind of lose the benefit of ramping because your opponent will catch up to you in Dawn in like a turn or 2. So yeah, I don't think pudding is the play here. And that brings us to all the O8 leaders. Let's take a look at what past leaders would still be strong in the sealed environment. So of course, Starter Deck 2 Kid has been strong in every sealed format up until now, because he's a 5 life leader, so that is a big boon there already. And then his leader ability reads activate main once per turn. If you pay 3 Dawn, you can trash a card from your hand, and then you can set this leader as active. So essentially he can attack twice, right? For 3 Dawn and a card in hand. If you have 7 Dawn left over, you can attack for 12k twice. This is great at finishing your opponent. 12k is a hard number to defend against, and it's great at like clearing your opponent's board too. Always having a second attack does add up when you need it. Also, mono green Jewelry Bonnie is great in a sealed format, so 5000 power 5 starting life. When your opponent attacks once per turn, if you pay 1 Dawn, you can rest up to one of your opponent's leaders or characters. This outright shuts down one of your opponent's attacks every turn. You do have to leave a Dawn up, which can be a little awkward, but it is well worth the price playing with like a curve of 1 Dawn behind. Just being able to outright deny an attack, because then in a sealed format they play big characters pretty often, right? It's very rare not to see like a 7k, 8k, or 9k body staring at you. So just being able to pay 1 Dawn to stop one of those saves you a bunch of cards in hand, right? If you stop a 7k, that's 2 cards that you save you don't have to counter against, and then you just take their or counter their leader hit for 1k. So because of that, you generate a lot of advantage out of this leader ability. So that's why Bonnie is strong, and I think will continue to be strong in this set. And quick story about Bonnie, I did mention that she was going to be like one of the best leaders in the 07 pre-release. I was met with people saying like, it's no Starter Deck Kid. Kid's still going to be dominant. Cut the Cooties way better. No one's going to be playing Bonnie. But, you know, in the end, she was like the most popular pre-release leader. It won like so many pre-releases. And now people after the fact are going to say like, oh, of course Bonnie was going to be strong. It's so obvious. Everyone could have noticed that. Why would you be proud that you expected Bonnie to be good? But I don't know, from what I saw, no one was thinking Bonnie was going to be the pre-release leader, and she ended up being the pre-release leader as I predicted. Why am I sharing this? I guess I just wanted to exemplify my credentials, I guess. I don't know, I just wanted to pat myself on the back there, I guess. There's also OP03 Charlotte Katakuri, so also another mono color leader, so he has 5 life, which is a great benefit over the dual color 4 life leaders, especially without the color restriction in sealed. So what he does is Dawn times 1 when attacking it, you can look at the top life card from the top of you or your opponent's life. And then you can put it back either on the top or bottom. Then after that, your leader gets plus 1000 power for the battle when he attacks. So yeah, just 1 Dawn to swing for 7. This is the magic number against every other 5k power leader, right? It takes a 2k and a 1k to defend against that. These add up, and you can swing for this number for 1 Dawn investment from like your second turn onward when you can attack. So this leader ability just generates a lot of pressure against your opponent. 7k is a really awkward number to have to defend against, and then you can also control your or your opponent's life triggers to a degree. There aren't too many impactful ones in this set, but just having it there to maybe like get rid of a dead card in your own life that maybe you don't want to get just yet, those like micro advantages can build up, but it's mainly for the 7k swing for 1 Dawn and starting out at 5 life. So that's all the leaders I wanted to go over. But yeah, the tried and true Bonnie, Kid, and Katakuri will be strong. There is an argument that Zoro might be viable in this set in particular due to how many animals there are. The animals are like kind of 3k or 4k-ish power bodies that can cheat out other animals. And because of that, the more bodies you can cheat out for free. Zoro's leader ability, giving them 1 extra power for just 1 Dawn on the leader, does like generate quite a bit of value for you. Like you get a bunch of free stats that way. So for once in a long while, right, and it's been quite a few sets now, Zoro might actually be viable in this set depending on the cards in your packs, so I would bring them just in case. And then of the 08 leaders, I would say probably Red Blue Marco is your best bet if you wanted to try somebody new. Everybody else is kind of risky, right? It either depends on cards in your pack or cards from older sets or just too restrictive like the Chopper. So let's move on to the cards. Up here I have all the 2k counters in the set. You'll want to run all of these. You can't guarantee how many 2k counters you get, and 2k counters are how you protect your characters and even your own life. So you'll want to run pretty much every one that you get. There are 10 to choose from. Hopefully you'll get multiple copies of them. And then also every blocker in the set should be running your deck. There's 8 different blockers in this set. This is quite low in terms of blocker count. Well, compared to last set, at least OP07 had a bunch of blockers. This one, they're a little lower, and then they're not as high impact, right? A lot of them are just like chump blockers, like 20 Doctors is chump, Numel is chump. Pedro is probably one of the better blockers. Here, let me bring him up so I can highlight what he does. So yeah, Pedro is a blocker, and then he has a pretty decent stat line, 4 cost 5k power. And then On KO, you can pick one of two effects. You can either rest one of your opponent's Dawn, or you can KO one of their rested 6 cost or lower characters. So if a 6 cost had killed Pedro, Pedro takes it down with them. That keeps their board clear for you to have to deal with on your turn after. And yet, being a 5k body means that he can attack whenever. Baron Tamago is also another interesting one. So he's not a great stat line blocker, like 3 costs for 4k. He's like kind of in an awkward spot. He's not a chump blocker, but he's not good enough to be an attacker. So he's like kind of overcosted for what you get. But his effect maybe makes up for it, because on KO, if you Dawn -1, you can play a Viscount Hyoko with a cost of 5 or less from your hand. So it does let you cheat out another character from your hand if he dies, but it has to be from your hand though, so you have to have him in your hand. And Hyoko is a 5 cost 6k power character, but I'll go over him later once I get to the purple section. And that's all the blockers I wanted to go over. Oh, actually, S-Shark is not a blocker. He bypasses blockers. I put him on here because I guess I filtered for the word blocker, but ignore S-Shark. So there's only 7 blockers in this set. Very low number of blockers, so they're very important. So you're want to run all of them, pretty much. And then that brings us to the vanillas. These are pretty much the filler cards in your deck, right? They don't have effects, but they have strong stat lines, and they have 1k counters, so they're not dead cards in hand. And to be honest, like from the 6 and 7 drop count, these actually end up being quite the big threats in the sealed environment, right? I would consider the 3 and the 4 drops more of like filler, but yeah, 6 and 7 drops are actually boss monsters with those stats. They're very hard to get rid of, and they're hard to defend against, right? 8k takes 2 2k counters to defend against, 9k takes 2 2ks and a 1k. So you probably want to use these cards to fill your like filler slots before checking your other cards with effects. And then we'll move on to our first card with an effect here. It's Tony Chopper, 3 cost 5k power. So on your turn and on play, or also when attacking, you can look at the top 5 cards of your deck. From among them, you can play an animal type character with the power of 4,000 or less rested, and then you place them back on the bottom of your deck in any order. So this is a like 2-for-1 card. You have to run some of these suboptimal animal cards in your deck to get value out of it. But if you're playing Zoro, playing this Chopper out means you have 2 bodies out. Dawn on your Zoro leader makes Chopper a 6k swing, and then you'll probably play another like 4k power character with the Chopper effect, and that can swing for 5k. And yeah, this is essentially like card draw and then playing it out for free. You generate a lot of advantage this way, and then whatever you play out, if they happen to take a hit and die, that's one counter you didn't have to expand from your hand too, and it saves your life that way too. And then he not only does that on play, he also does it when attacking too. So if you can keep him alive, you can do this every turn. So I think Chopper would be really great, even in a non-Zoro deck too, if you have enough of the good animals. Speaking of good animals, we have Robson here. So 3 cost 4k power, 1k counter. He can be cheated out by that Chopper that we saw, but since he comes out rested, he can't attack just yet. But yeah, Dawn ×2, this character gains rush. So just a rush option in a sealed environment is very tricksy. Your opponent will not account for it sometimes, and you'll have that 1 extra hit to go for lethal, or to kill a character that they didn't have counter for. At the very least, 3 Dawn plus the 2 that you attach means that he's a 5 Dawn 6k rush attacker. Not the best, but you know, not worse. That's the best you could ask for with the rush body. And yeah, the fact that he synergizes with the Chopper card makes him a decent pick. We also have Wapple, 6 cost 6k power. So stat line is not the greatest, but he does have a strong effect. So Dawn ×1 when attacking. Give it to one of your opponent's characters minus 2,000 power for this turn, and then give this character plus 2k power until the end of your opponent's next turn. So essentially he's a 8k body, if you think about it that way. Just not on the turn that you play him, because you have to attack with the Dawn attached to get access to that. So when he does attack, he is a 9k attack, right? The Dawn attached on him makes him a 7k, and then he gets plus 2 to himself. Not only that, if he's attacking into something, he gives it minus 2k potentially. So if you're using Wapple to essentially kill a character, it's almost as if he gives himself like plus 4k in extra stats along with the Dawn you attach to him. Yeah, effectively, he's like a 11k swing into a body, but just a 9k swing into a leader. And yeah, he stays in 8k until the end of your opponent's next turn, which makes it hard for your opponent to like attack back into him and kill him. So Wapple is a great board clearer, good trading card, because it is a trading card game, you know? And then up next we have an event. I guess I didn't find any other characters too great. So I'd Never Shoot You. Yeah, the way I set up this video is that in the morning I went through all the cards and put out ones that stood out, and now I'm recording going over it, if you're wondering why I had such a weird reaction. So what this event does is, on counter, give it to one of your leaders or characters plus 4,000 power for this battle, then give it to one of your opponent's characters minus 1,000 power for this turn. So at the very worst, it's a 2 Dawn 4k event counter. These are things you want to put in your deck anyway, because there's a low counter available in the 2k counter slots, and then in this set in particular, there's not too many blockers, so leaving Dawn up to counter for 4k is great. but I'd Never Shoot You is a little bit better than that, in that if a character were to attack you and you use this event to stop that, it's almost like 2'd on for 5k, right? Because you give it minus 1k and then you get that plus 4k. So effectively it's plus 5k to your leader or whatever character that you're trying to save. But yeah, if it's a leader hit that you're trying to defend against, this does nothing for you. Oh, but do note that it's kind of independent too. So if their leader swung at you and you played this event, you can give minus 1k to a character and then counter the leader hit for 4k. And then that character potentially may not be able to attack you if they're debuffed for 1k, or at least it's a little easier to defend against that. So yeah, you can use this card flexibly. It doesn't have to be the same target. And then on trigger, it gives your leader plus 1k power for the turn. If you trigger it out as the first hit of the attack string from your opponent, it could save your ass. Up next, we have Baku Baku Shock. It's a 3-don event, so you can use it on main and counter. These kind of events are very flexible. So you give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 3k power for the turn, and then give up to one of your characters 3000 power for the turn. So similarly to the I'd Never Shoot, this is effectively plus 6k in stats if you're trying to protect the character. And if your opponent attacks with the character, which in the sealed environment, that's going to be the case, right? Your leader isn't going to get too much action compared to your characters. So yeah, defensively, you debuff one of your opponent's characters for minus 3k, you buff your own for plus 3k. And again, this can be disjointed too. If 3k is enough to save your character from one attack, you could do that and then give minus 3k to a different character that hasn't attacked yet, and that'll make it harder for that character to attack your character too. And then on main, this can be used on main as well as a removal tool, right? It's plus 6k from a character attacking to another character. So whatever you target with the Baku Baku Shot is most likely going to die for 3-don. I'd say that's worth it, especially since like hard removal is rare in a sealed environment. So this requiring like a character to attack into something. So this essentially is like pseudo hard removal. You do need like a character to swing with though. And then on trigger, KO to one of your opponent's characters with 5000 power or less. This is a great trigger. It catches your opponent off guard, right? It just outright gets rid of a 5k body. Up next, going on to green, we have character Carrot. So 5 cost 6k power, 1k counter on play, and when attacking up to one of your opponent's rested 7 cost or less characters do not become active during your opponent's next refresh phase. So yeah, this locks down your opponent's characters. 7 drop, I think, is like the sweet spot. A lot of your opponent's characters will be 7 or lower. So playing out Carrot after they have swung with something just denies one attack from them for every turn that you can keep Carrot alive, because not only does it work on play, if you can keep Carrot alive and keep attacking, you can do this every turn. So great at locking out a character. It combined with the Bonnie leader ability, you can just remove 2 attacks from your opponent every turn. That makes it really hard for them to be able to like do anything against you, and it gives you like all the time in the world to set up your board to handle theirs. And then we have Electrical Luna, so we're onto the green events. 3 cost. On main, all of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 7 or less do not become active during your opponent's next refresh phase. Then on trigger, rest up to one of your opponent's characters. So this is basically Carrot, but like a mass Carrot, but only for 1 turn. But this can buy you enough time to set up your board to maybe clear your opponent's board, right? Whatever they have rested stays rested. You can attack into it a second time, except for whatever they just played new. And yeah, the trigger can be nice too. It can outright deny 1 attack. So if you have Carrot, Electrical Luna as a trigger, and then your Bonnie, you can surmise that your opponent may not be able to hit you too many times. Moving on to blue, we have Atmos, 4 cost 5k power. On play, you can reveal 2 cards from your hand with the White Bear Pirate's type, and then you can return that to one of your opponent's characters with the cost of 4 or less to its owner's hand. So this is probably as good as it gets in terms of removal in the mid game. You're playing a 4-drop to bounce a 4-drop that is completely like tempo positive. You outright deny whatever your opponent just played, whether you're playing this on your 4 or your 5-don turn. But yeah, it's really restrictive. You have to reveal 2 White Bear Pirates type cards from your hand. So you may have to run some suboptimal ones, but you know, there's 2k counters, there's blockers that are White Bear Pirate types. So at the very worst, he's at 4 cost 5k, so not the worst thing in the world. But if you can get that bounce off, I think it's a really big tempo swing for you. We also have 10 cost Edward Newgate, 12k power. On play, if your leader includes the White Bear Pirate's type, and then you have 2 or less life cards until the end of your opponent's next turn. All of your opponent's characters cannot attack unless they first discard 2 cards from their hand. So this pretty much buys you an entire turn, right? At that point in time, and especially in a sealed environment with such low card draw, your opponent is probably not gonna discard 2 from their hand to attack you unless they're like sure they can kill you. But yeah, this card can only be run in a Marco deck, or I guess if you want to bring the red ace or the red Whitebeard leader, you can run this. But out of those 3 leaders, I do think red blue Marco is the best one, and then this card would fit perfectly in a Marco deck. It would be your bossiest of boss monsters. It'll buy you a whole turn to potentially go for the lethal clapback. And even in a non-Marco deck, you could still run it as just a vanilla 10 cost 12k power. We also have Jozu 6 cost 7k power. On play, you can return one of your characters other than this card to your hand. And if you do this, you can return up to one of your opponent's 6 cost or lower characters to their hand. So kind of like Atmos, but a lot more easier. To pull off, you just have to bounce one of your own characters, and then that lets you bounce a 6 cost. Also big tempo swing, right? Playing a 6 drop to bounce a 6 drop. And he also has 7k power himself to attack with afterwards. It won't be too hard to have another character to bounce back to your hand. You can even like preemptively do it. You can play out like a cheap 2k counter like Sasaki or something that costs 1. And then play Jozu to bounce it back to your hand. Since it's a 2k counter, you want it in your hand anyway. And that lets you get rid of one of your opponent's characters. This would be a 7 Dawn play though, but that seems well worth it to me. And at worst, he's still a 7k swinger, so I would like to think that he's a good card. Moving on to purple, that means no blue events. Let me double check, just in case. Yeah, I did not like any of the blue events. Okay, so King, 7 cost 8k power. On play, Dawn -1. If your opponent has 5 or more Dawn cards on their field, this character gains rush until the end of the turn. When you're at 7 Dawn, your opponent will most likely be at 5, especially since we're not ramping in sealed as easily. So they probably would have been at 6 Dawn if you're at 7, or if you're at 8, they would have just been at 7. So you play King, he'll have rush. 8k rush is strong in a sealed environment, so it's a no-brainer to run this card. Dawn -1 isn't the worst either. It's not a full turn behind, it's half a turn. And if you're at like 9 Dawn, going Dawn -1 brings you to 10 next turn anyway, so you could either play him at your 9 or your 10 Dawn turn. He's even fine on curve, I feel. We also have Charlotte Cracker, 4 cost 5k power. Then activate main once per turn. If you Dawn -1, you can play up to 1 Cracker Soldier from your hand. So Cracker Soldier is actually a blocker, which is a card you want to run anyway. You'll probably have a few of these in your deck since you do want to run blockers, and he's an attacking stat line anyway, so it's not the worst thing in the world. Playing Cracker to just cheat one of these out can be a viable strategy, right? You're getting 2 bodies, 2 5k bodies for a Dawn -1, and one of them's a blocker, and then you can do this every turn that you keep Cracker alive. But yeah, you do have to have it in hand, and it just depends on how many of these Cracker Soldiers you get. So if you have like an abundance of these, it might be worth it to run Charlotte Cracker. Up next, we have Charlotte Pedals Pedal, 3 cost 5k power, no counter. On KO, set up to one of your Dawn from your Dawn deck is rested, so he ramps when he dies. This would be great probably like in your first 2 to 3 turns of the game. If you don't have him out by then, he's kind of a dead card since he doesn't have counter. So do be wary of that. If you don't really benefit from the ramp, maybe don't run Charlotte Pedals Pedal, but at the end of the day, he's still a 5k attacker, right? He's basically a vanilla. And then his trigger might be worth it too, but Dawn -1, you can just play him out, right? In the late game, if you need 1 extra body to swing for lethal, if you trigger out a Pedals Pedal, he's your extra 5k. And then 9 cost Charlotte Linlin, one of the better boss monsters in the set. So 9 cost 9k power. On play, if you Dawn -1, you can trash 1 card from your hand, add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to the top of your life, and then you can place up to one of your opponent's characters that costs 6 or less on the top or bottom of their owner's life face up. So not only is she removal, right, she gets rid of a 6 drop, she's also heals you, and then she's a threat herself, 9k body. This does everything you want in a sealed environment, right? It gets rid of one of your opponent's threats. 6 drop is nothing to scoff at. It's usually like a 8k stat line body. So that's an 8k you don't have to defend against anymore. If they ever take it to hand, it's potentially a 1k counter, or if it's like a card with an effect, a no counter card. That's what you want to kind of aim for too, putting no counter cards into the bottom of their life. Because in like a late game scenario where they have to depend on counter from life to survive, you know that card has no counter, so it helps set that up a little bit easier. And yeah, the fact that it heals you too and is a threat from every turn after that makes this one of the auto-include cards, I feel, in the set. Then Baron Tamago, we went over earlier, he cheats out the Viscount Hyoko from your hand though and on KO, but he's a blocker anyway, so you want to have him die. So it cheats out Hyoko, who is a 5-drop 6k. Then on your opponent's turn, when Hyoko dies, you can Dawn -1 and play a Count Niwatori with the cost of 6 or less from your deck, and then shuffle your deck. So this one's great in that it plays from your deck, you don't have to have it in hand, and Niwatori is a bigger character, it's the biggest one of the 3, so 6 cost 7k power. And then what Niwatori does is kind of the same thing when on your opponent's turn. If Niwatori dies, if you Dawn -1, you can play Baron Tamago with the cost of 4 or less from your deck. So even he plays from your deck. So Hyoko and Niwatori play from deck. At the end of this cycle, you play out a blocker too, who can play out another Hyoko from your hand if you have it. But yeah, I think there's a lot of value in just having these cards in your deck, right? Hyoko always replaces himself with Niwatori, Niwatori replaces himself with the blocker. Worst case scenario, you have another body out, and they're all usable bodies too, right? They're not like shitter stat line cards. So I would venture to say that these are like auto includes as well, right? Just the fact that you can play from your deck is amazing. Then moving on to black, we have Kaido, 9 cost 9k power. Activate main once per turn, you may discard 1 card from your hand. So if this character was played this turn, you can place up to one of your opponent's 7 cost or lower characters in the trash. Then your opponent discards 1 card from their hand. So while the Lin Lin is kind of defensive, Kaido is super offensive. Same stat line though, 9 cost for 9k power, but yeah, you trash one of your opponent's 7 cost or lower. It doesn't go to their life, it goes directly to the discard. And this bypasses on KO effects too. So we went over like the Hyoko and then the Niwatori, right? On KO. If you play Kaido to kill one of these, they actually don't activate the on KO part. So he's strong for that too. And then on top of that, after you decimated one of their characters on board, they have to discard a card from hand. Hand resources are precious and sealed, so this Kaido just does everything that you also want in the sealed environment. So I'd also auto-include all of the Kaidos I get too. And he does hit 1 cost higher than the Lin Lin, so something to take note of. Up next, we also have Jack, 7 cost 8k power, and then if you play him out, he has plus 4 cost, so he's an 11 cost on board. So activate main, you can rest this card, draw 1 card, and then charge 1 card from your hand. Then K up to one of your opponent's cost 3 or lower characters. So you do kind of need cost reduction to use Jack if you don't have a lot of other cost reduction sources, or if you're not running Purple Black King. Maybe don't run Jack, but he's still a 7 cost 8k body. 8k is not too bad of a stat line. So just off of that merit, it might be worth it to run him. But yeah, the KO part is what makes him strong and constructed, but you do get the help of like all the other cost reduction in black to do this. In the sealed environment, we have like Sasaki is probably our best bet. Let me bring him up so you guys know what I'm talking about. This guy, right? You could rest one of your Dawn and then this character itself to give -2 cost or something. This lets you kill a 5 cost with the Jack just by tapping him. And then I guess if you're super desperate, you could just use them to cycle a card out of your hand every turn. Because you can just draw 1, discard 1 without KOing anything. But with the 8k body, I don't know, you'd rather just swing with them. So yeah, I think he's still runnable either way, even if you don't get value out of the KO. We also have Jinbei, 5 cost 6k power, Dawn times 1 when attacking. If you have a character with the cost of 8 or more, KO to one of your opponent's characters with the cost of 4 or less. So if you play him out on curve, he doesn't do too much, he's just a vanilla 5 cost 6k. But in the late game, you will get to your top end, you'll play your 8 cost or more characters, right? Jack is 11 cost, Kaido's 9 cost, and then Lin's a 9 cost. So Jinbei being able to just pop a 4 cost at the late game means that he kills a lot of the blockers in this set. In fact, every blocker except for Cracker Soldier can be popped by this Jinbei. Just be careful with Pedro. Pedro will kill Jinbei along with him. But yeah, it's more of like a late game investment playing this Jinbei, because eventually he'll be able to generate a lot of value for you, just outright getting rid of one of your opponent's troublesome blockers, or even like an attacking body too, right? There's some like 4 cost 6k vanillas you want to get rid of. And yeah, again, combined with Sasaki or the Purple Black King's leader ability, you can hit a higher stat line. You can hit a 6 cost with it. And then we have an event, so People's Dreams Don't Ever End, 1 cost event. On counter, if you trash 1 card from the top of your deck, if that card has a cost of 6 or greater, up to one of your leaders or characters gets plus 5k during this battle. Super conditional. If you happen to know that your deck has like mostly 6 cost or higher characters, or cards in general, it doesn't have to be a character, you could potentially run this, like if you have a 90% certainty that you'll hit a 6 drop or higher. So because of that, you know, 1 Dawn, 5k counter, that's an incredibly efficient cost to counter with. So super situational, super conditional. If you feel like the numbers are on your side, I would consider this card as well. And then on trigger, you could play up to 1 black character with the cost of 3 or less from your trash. That's also great, playing it from trash. I don't believe there's too many good options though for that. Yeah, no, there's not even a vanilla 3 cost 5k attacker in this set. Oh well. Moving on to yellow, we have Charlotte Opera, 6 cost 6k power. On play, you can trash 1 card from your hand, KO to one of your opponent's characters with a cost equal to or less than the number of your life cards. So it's kind of like reverse Gedatsu. Gedatsu KOs on play depending on your opponent's life total. Charlotte Opera does it depending on your own life total, and you have to chuck a card from your hand, but hard removal like this is valuable in sealed. So on your 6th Dawn turn, if you're going second, this would be your 3rd turn. If you're a 5 life leader, your opponent would have been able to attack you on their 3 Dawn turn and their 5 Dawn turn. If you defended both of these, you'll have 5 life. You can potentially pop a 5 cost with this, which would have been the biggest thing they would have played the turn prior, right? Because he's a 6 drop. It's your 6th Dawn turn. So if you have this in hand, yeah, I would just go aggro on or not aggro. What's the opposite of aggro? Defenso. I would go defenso on protecting your life just for 2 turns there, and then get value out of Opera, and then you can start taking life to refill your hand if you need it. Because yeah, just getting rid of whatever your opponent just played is a huge tempo loss for them, because that would have been all they did for the turn prior if they played a 5 drop. And in the late game, Opera is still a 1k counter, so he's not the worst. You also have Jewelry Bonnie, 3 cost 4k power, Dawn times 1 on your turn, once per turn. When your opponent loses a life, you draw 2 cards and discard a card from your hand. So yeah, card draw is valuable in a sealed environment. Having it in yellow is also very interesting. This makes it so your opponent also doesn't want to take life as willy-nilly, because it gives you card advantage in hand. But yeah, do be careful swinging with the Bonnie though, because she'll be a kill target for sure. She's one of the higher priority ones. If she's ever rested, probably say goodbye to the Bonnie, but try to get as much value out of the draw from her effect as you can before she dies. Then on trigger, you could draw 2, discard 1. It helps filter your hand 2 cards deep, so it's great. You also have Nami, 5 cost 5k power. So on play, if you trash a card with trigger from your hand, you can kill to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. Then if you have 3 or less cards in your hand, you can draw a card. Also valuable hard removal on curve as well, because if it was your 5 Dawn turn, or even if it's your 6 Dawn turn, your opponent would have played a 4 or 5 drop, right? Depending on whoever went first. Nami can also, like Opera, pop whatever they just played, the maximum cost of whatever they just played. You do have to discard a trigger card specifically, so a little more restrictive than Opera in that regard, but you don't have to worry about life totals or anything like that. And yeah, in a sealed environment, there's not too many other trigger cards that you have to pull from. It's not as reliable, so it depends on your card pull. If you have a bunch of good trigger cards in your deck, Nami would be a good option for sure. And then yeah, it refills your hand too if you have 3 or less cards, so just an extra cherry on top. And then as a trigger herself, she can just use her on-play effect. You don't get the body, but you still get the pop, a 5 drop or less. We also have S Shark, who I mistook as a blocker earlier, but he just evades blockers, so 4 cost 5k power. Dawn times 1 when attacking, your opponent can't activate blocker during this battle, so unblockable Shark Boy. Great in a sealed environment, but there's not too many blockers to begin with, but if they happen to get him, they're probably not expecting you to bypass it with this with this S Shark, so a great option, a great threat to have on board. And then on trigger, you may trash 1 card from your hand. If you have 2 or less life, you can play this card out, so free body. That is great. We also have S Snake, 5 cost 6k power. So on play, up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 6 or less other than a Monkey D. Luffy cannot attack until the end of your opponent's next turn. Kind of similar to the blue boa from 06, 07, 07. So just outright denying an attack does save you. Precious counter in hand, because a 6 cost or less is a pretty sizable body, right? It probably has 7k or 8k attack. Again, that's like 2 to 3 cards you don't have to use to defend if they attack your leader. But yeah, this just prevents them from attacking. They do still get untapped on the refresh phase, so you can't like starve them out or anything like that. But the effect can come in handy, and then as a trigger, you could just activate the on-play part to deny 1 attack. Almost like a Bedge trigger, except you can't hit leaders or anything with a cost of 7 or higher. We also have S-Hawk, 4 cost 5k power, Dawn times 1 while your life total is lower than your opponent's. This character has plus 2000 power and cannot be killed in battle by cards with the slash attribute. So if you are lower life than your opponent for 1 Dawn, he becomes a 8k, 4 cost 8k body. That sounds pretty great to me. It's a good equalizer if you do happen to be at lower life. Then as a trigger, you can trash 1 card from your hand. If you have 2 or less life, play this character. So free body, can't complain. He has counter 2, can't complain. Then moving on to the secret rares, we have Silver's Rayleigh, 8 cost, 8k power. Probably the best boss monster in the set. Because on play, what he does is you can choose up to 2 of your opponent's characters until the end of your opponent's next turn. One of them gets minus 3k, the other one gets minus 2k, and then you can KO a 3k power or lower character. So all 3 of these effects are independent of each other. You can get minus 2k to something, minus 2k to another thing, and pop a third thing that happens to have 3k power at that point in time. But this also means that you can like KO any 6k power character with this effect. If you have Red Blue Marco as a leader, you can KO at 8k, right? Because your leader also gives it minus 2k if you have an extra Dawn to spare. So yeah, it would be like a 9 Dawn play for Red Blue Marco. But yeah, it's a 8k body plus removal plus a debuff, because the minus 3k and minus 2k persists on your opponent's next turn. So those targets that you hit with this debuff have a harder time to attack back into you. That does save you a lot of counter, and again, low blockers, low 2k counter count. This is a incredibly strong effect, both offensively and defensively. Because even offensively, you can use it to debuff something to attack with your characters into as well. Minus 3k and minus 2k to something usually will kill whatever got tagged by it. So just hope you pull Silver's Rayleigh in your packs, because whoever has this, I think, will usually win most of their games. We also have Kaido and Linlan, 10 cost 12k power. When attacking, if you Dawn minus 10, KO all other characters on board, and then put a card from the top of your deck to your life, and then trash out the 1 card from your opponent's life. So very high risk, high reward. It's a very slow card, because not only do you have to wait until you're at 10 Dawn, you also have to play it out, and you also have to wait a turn to attack with it after. Now, is the effect worth it? It can be, with how little hard removal there is in the set. If your opponent can overwhelm you at one point, this is a great board equalizer. It pops the whole board. It even heals you a life to protect against the leader hit that your opponent has to hit you with the turn after. And it potentially could win you the game. If your opponent has 1 life and you swing with Kaido and Linlan, they trash that life and then they have to defend against the 12k hit. But yeah, it does kill your own characters too, and you do have to Dawn minus 10. This means you're starting back at 0. You're at 2 Dawn the turn after. unless you're like pudding, you have no way to ramp. So it is like a card that you hope to get a lot of value out of, right? You want to be able to prolong the game after you play Kaido and Linlin, or at least win with it if you swing with it. Because if not, then your opponent can just refill their board with the 10 Dawn they have the turn after. You'll get like 1 extra swing in with Kaido and Linlin for 12 while you're at like 4 Dawn. And then yeah, at that point, if you haven't won already, you're probably dead. So be careful of that. But also, as a side note, you don't have to Dawn -10. You could just treat it as a 10 cost vanilla with 12k, and then whenever you attack, don't minus Dawn. That's one way to use it as well. And then as for the SP cards, there aren't too many we can use. I'd probably consider only like, oh, why is it so zoomed in? Tashigi is a 2k counter, that's pretty much it. Oh, it does give like -2 cost or something too. So it plays well with the Jack and then the whatever other cards that I mentioned that need cost reduction. Also, there is Queen. Yes, there's a Queen reprint in this set, SP Queen. It's the one from the starter deck. So it has blocker, 5 cost 6k power. On play, if you Dawn -1, you can draw 2, discard 1. So your +1 cards, you have a 6k blocker. It filters your hand a little bit too. So this is definitely a good option for the deck if you happen to get it. Let me just go over all the other SPs so you know what I'm talking about, why it's so bad. So we have Ace here, the Rush Ace that only has Rush in a Whitebeard Pirates leader deck. Which I guess if you're running Red Blue Marco, you could consider Ace, right? He gets Rush, 7k attacker, he gives 2 of your opponent's characters -3k power for the turn too. Yeah, definitely if you're running Red Blue Marco, if you pull this Ace, you have to run him. He's too good not to be run. In any other deck, would you want to run it? He does give -3k to something, 2 things that you can attack into, but that might just be too slow, I don't know. Potentially. Actually, yeah, now that I think about it, if you pick up Ace, run Ace, no matter what deck you are. The 3k might just be worth it already. But the other SP cards though, Pudding searches for a Big Mom Pirates type card. There aren't too many good ones in this set. I guess there's the vanillas, but you're not running like a full Big Mom Pirates package, so you don't really need the searcher. And you're not running 10 cost Big Mom either, which is like your priority search target. There's also Bonnie, the tap searcher Bonnie. Are there any supernovas in this set? I don't think there are. It's all minks, right? In green, so you don't have any targets to search with this Bonnie anyway. And then there's Gecko Borea, who can pick up a 7 Warlords of the Sea or a Thriller Barks Pirates type character from your trash with a cost of 4 or less back to your hand from the starter deck, the Crocodile starter deck. And I don't think there are any 7 Warlords in this set, are there? No, they're all Whitebeard Pirates, so yeah, you won't find targets with him either. And that's why it's just Tashigi, Queen, and now Ace. Some Ace redemption here, sorry Ace. So that's it for my OP08 pre-release guide. This set itself is kind of low power, I feel, compared to 07. But yeah, that's to be expected. I think this is like equivalent to OP04. And then the next set is the big power set, because 05 like power crept the game. 09 is looking like it will too. And yeah, let me know how you guys do in your pre-release tournaments. Show me what amazing cards you pulled in your packs in the Discord. Show me your prize cards in the Discord. We have a pretty good time. Whenever new sets reveal, we all share what we pull with each other. So yeah, link to my Discord in the description below. Join in all the fun. Let me know if this guide helps you, and share it around if you think it's helpful. And like and comment. Subscribe if you're not already. I would appreciate it. I will love you. And yeah, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Card D Kaizoku.